The Occupational Safety and Health Administration's Lockout Tagout program, also known as LOTO, was implemented on January 2, 1990. This program operates under the control of Hazardous Energy Sources Standard. The primary purpose of this standard is to safeguard workers from the unexpected release of hazardous energy. This includes various forms of energy such as electrical, mechanical, thermal, and chemical energy. The protection is specifically during the servicing or maintenance of machines and equipment. Understanding the scope and requirements of the Lockout Tagout standard is crucial for maintaining a safe working environment. The standard outlines specific procedures and requirements that employers must follow to ensure the safety of their employees. Firstly, a comprehensive energy control program must be developed. Secondly, documented lockout tagout procedures for each piece of equipment should be in place. Thirdly, employee training on these procedures is a must. The energy control program is the foundation of an effective lockout tagout system. It establishes the framework for controlling hazardous energy sources. This program should include elements such as energy isolation, lockout tagout device application, and verification procedures. Lockout tagout procedures are specific to each piece of equipment. They detail the steps required to safely isolate and energize the equipment before any servicing or maintenance work is performed. These procedures should be clear, concise, and readily accessible to all employees. Employee training is essential for ensuring that workers understand the hazards associated with hazardous energy and the proper procedures for controlling it. Training should cover the following topics. 1. The types of hazardous energy present in the workplace. 2. The methods for isolating and de-energizing equipment. 3. The proper use of lockout tagout devices. 4. The procedures for verifying energy isolation. And 5. The importance of following all lockout tagout procedures. The Lockout Tagout standard also requires employers to provide employees with the necessary lockout tagout devices. These devices are used to physically prevent equipment from being energized. Examples of lockout tagout devices include locks, tags, and circuit breaker Locks are used to secure energy isolating devices in the safe or off position. Tags are used to identify the equipment that is being locked out and to warn others not to operate it. Circuit breaker are used to prevent circuit breakers from being switched on. The Lockout Tagout standard requires employers to conduct periodic inspections of their energy control programs to ensure that they are effective. These inspections should be conducted by authorized employees who are knowledgeable in lockout tagout procedures. The inspection should cover all aspects of the energy control program, including the written procedures, the training program, and the use of lockout tagout devices. In addition to the requirements outlined in the Lockout Tagout standard, there are a number of best practices that employers can implement to further enhance their lockout tagout programs. These best practices include conducting hazard assessments to identify potential sources of hazardous energy, developing equipment-specific lockout tagout procedures, providing employees with ongoing training on lockout tagout procedures, using lockout tagout devices that are durable and tamper-resistant, and regularly reviewing and updating the energy control program. Failure to comply with the Lockout Tagout standard can result in serious consequences, including worker injuries, fatalities, and significant fines. Employers who fail to protect their employees from hazardous energy can be held liable for any injuries or damages that result from their negligence. It is important for employers to understand the requirements of the Lockout Tagout standard and to implement effective energy control programs to protect their employees. The Lockout Tagout standard applies to a wide range of industries and workplaces. It is particularly important in industries where workers are exposed to hazardous energy sources, such as manufacturing, construction, and utilities. However, the standard applies to any workplace where employees may be exposed to hazardous energy during the servicing or maintenance of machines and equipment. Understanding the scope of the Lockout Tagout standard is essential for ensuring that all employees are protected. The standard defines hazardous energy as any energy that could cause injury or illness to employees. This includes electrical energy, mechanical energy, thermal energy, chemical energy, and other forms of energy. It is important to identify all potential sources of hazardous energy in the workplace and to develop procedures for controlling them. The Lockout Tagout standard requires employers to develop and implement a written energy control program. This program should outline the procedures for identifying, isolating, and controlling hazardous energy sources. The program should also include provisions for employee training, periodic inspections, and the use of Lockout Tagout devices. The written energy control program should be readily available to all employees. The Lockout Tagout standard requires employers to train employees on the hazards associated with hazardous energy and the proper procedures for controlling it. Training should be provided to all employees who may be exposed to hazardous energy, including authorized employees and affected employees. Authorized employees are those who are responsible for performing Lockout Tagout procedures. Affected employees are those who work in the area where Lockout Tagout procedures are being performed. Training should cover the following topics. Firstly, the types of hazardous energy present in the workplace. Secondly, the methods for isolating and energizing equipment. Thirdly, the proper use of Lockout Tagout devices. Fourthly, the procedures for verifying energy isolation. And fifthly, the importance of following all Lockout Tagout procedures. The Lockout Tagout standard requires employers to conduct periodic inspections of their energy control programs to ensure that they are effective. These inspections should be conducted by authorized employees who are knowledgeable in Lockout Tagout procedures. The inspections should cover all aspects of the energy control program, including the written procedures, the training program, and the use of Lockout Tagout devices. The findings of the periodic inspection should be documented and used to improve the energy control program. The Lockout Tagout standard requires employers to use Lockout Tagout devices to physically prevent equipment from being energized. These devices are used to secure energy isolating devices in the safe or off position. Examples of Lockout Tagout devices include locks, tags, and circuit breaker. Locks are used to secure energy isolating devices in the safe or off position. Tags are used to identify the equipment that is being locked out and to warn others not to operate it. Circuit breaker are used to prevent circuit breakers from being switched on. Lockout Tagout devices should be durable, tamper-resistant, and readily identifiable. The Lockout Tagout standard outlines specific procedures for controlling hazardous energy during the servicing or maintenance of machines and equipment. These procedures should be followed whenever employees are working on equipment that could potentially release hazardous energy. The procedures include the following steps. Firstly, identify all potential sources of hazardous energy. Secondly, notify all affected employees. Thirdly, shut down the equipment. Fourthly, isolate the equipment from all energy sources. Fifthly, apply Lockout Tagout devices. Sixthly, verify that the equipment is isolated from all energy sources. And seventhly, perform the servicing or maintenance work. After the servicing or maintenance work is completed, the Lockout Tagout devices must be removed and the equipment must be re-energized. The procedures for removing Lockout Tagout devices and re-energizing equipment include the following steps. Firstly, inspect the equipment to ensure that all tools and materials have been removed. Secondly, notify all affected employees. Thirdly, remove the Lockout Tagout devices. Fourthly, re-energize the equipment. And fifthly, verify that the equipment is operating properly. The Lockout Tagout standard includes specific requirements for different types of energy isolating devices. Energy isolating devices are those that are used to physically prevent energy from flowing to the equipment. Examples of energy isolating devices include circuit breakers, disconnect switches, valves, and blank flanges. The Lockout Tagout standard requires employers to use energy isolating devices that are appropriate for the type of energy being controlled. This standard also includes specific requirements for the location and operation of energy isolating devices. The Lockout Tagout standard includes specific requirements for controlling hazardous energy during group Lockout Tagout procedures. Group Lockout Tagout procedures are used when multiple employees are working on the same piece of equipment. The procedures are designed to ensure that all employees are protected from hazardous energy. The Lockout Tagout standard requires employers to designate a primary authorized employee who is responsible for coordinating the group Lockout Tagout procedure. The primary authorized employee is responsible for ensuring that all employees are properly trained, that all energy sources are isolated, and that all Lockout Tagout devices are properly applied. The Lockout Tagout standard includes specific requirements for controlling hazardous energy during shift changes. Shift changes can create a potential hazard if Lockout Tagout procedures are not properly followed. The Lockout Tagout standard requires employers to develop procedures for transferring Lockout Tagout responsibilities from one shift to another. The procedures should ensure that all employees are aware of the Lockout Tagout status of the equipment and that all Lockout Tagout devices are properly applied. The Lockout Tagout standard includes specific requirements for controlling hazardous energy during the testing or positioning of equipment. Testing or positioning of equipment can create a potential hazard if Lockout Tagout procedures are not properly followed. The Lockout Tagout standard requires employers to develop procedures for testing or positioning equipment that minimize the risk of exposure to hazardous energy. The procedures should include provisions for isolating the equipment from all energy sources, applying Lockout Tagout devices, and verifying that the equipment is isolated from all energy sources. The Lockout Tagout standard includes specific requirements for controlling hazardous energy during contractor activities. Contractors can pose a potential hazard if they are not properly trained in Lockout Tagout procedures. The Lockout Tagout standard requires employers to ensure that contractors are aware of the Lockout Tagout procedures in place at the facility and that they are properly trained in those procedures. The Lockout Tagout standard is a complex and comprehensive standard. It is important for employers to understand the requirements of the standard and to implement effective energy control programs to protect their employees. Failure to comply with the Lockout Tagout standard can result in serious consequences, including worker injuries, fatalities, and significant fines. Employers who fail to protect their employees from hazardous energy can be held liable for any injuries or damages that result from their negligence. The Lockout Tagout standard is an essential tool for protecting workers from hazardous energy. By implementing effective energy control programs, employers can create a safer working environment for their employees. Remember, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration's Lockout Tagout program took effect January 2, 1990.